The title of this session is Scholarship for Clinical Faculty. This presentation was created by my colleague Meg and I. I've listed our email addresses here on this slide in case you have any questions. You can feel free to follow up with either one of us. In the short time we have here, I'm going to go over three things: why to do scholarship, how to do scholarship, and how to get published. So why to do scholarship? The scholarly enterprise has been described as the detailed study of a subject in order to discover information or achieve a new understanding or application of it. Legal scholarship, more specifically, is known as idea generating, creative, innovative, introspective, analytical, and critical. And so I encourage clinical faculty to think about, why do you want to engage in the scholarly enterprise? We do have valuable things and knowledge to add to the world. And so a good reason to do it is to add our knowledge to the world. The others listed on the slide are equally important reasons. All highlight addressing a problem from practice, improving a local condition. Because we are in the field, so to speak, we are more likely to see specific problems that scholars might not see. And so that is often a very compelling reason to write. Similarly, in terms of sharing pedagogical expertise with experiential faculty is also a compelling reason to write. And writing can enhance your standing at your institution or within the legal academy as well. I will just say that for myself, understanding the why I do scholarship helps me keep me grounded and helps me to come back to it when I start to have questions about why am I doing this. And so I encourage you, before you start to write, to really think about what are the reasons that you are doing this, and let that ground you in the enterprise as you continue on the journey to write. So there are many different types of legal scholarship, and I think it's important to say this because there might be some assumptions that there's only one type of law review article. I think especially many people think the doctrinal restatement, for example, is the quintessential law review article, but there are not. There's no way to write legal scholarship. There are many ways. There's critical scholarship, and there is policy analysis, there are comparative or historical inquiries, lots of different ways to come about this. And so you might ask yourself, what kind of scholarship should I write? And I suggest that you write what moves you. If a doctrinal restatement doesn't move you, then don't write a doctrinal restatement. If you are moved by wanting to engage in a critical project or critical analysis, then you should write in that way. I also suggest that you go back to your purpose. Your purpose will help you to dictate what kind of scholarship you want to write. If you want to write to add knowledge to the world, then maybe you want to write either a traditional critical project or even a policy analysis. It's also important to think about the institutional norms that are relevant. And what I mean by this is that different institutions may value different kinds of scholarship. And so different kinds of scholarship might count to your institution. So if that is a factor for you, make sure that you are aware of the institutional norms and that you are writing scholarship that fits within those institutional norms. So now I'll segue to the how to write scholarship. And so in order to really understand the how-to part, it's important to understand the platform and audience first. So there are different kinds of law-related journals. There are the general law review articles, which are for broadly applicable legal analysis, the mainline law reviews at institutions. There are law review symposia that deal with a specific issue or concern that may publish a symposium volume. There are specialized or specialty journals that might focus in a particular area, law and technology or civil rights, for example. And then there are peer-reviewed journals. And so when I say peer-reviewed journals, I mean these are journals which are vetted by our colleagues, professionals, law professors who read and edit the law review, the articles, whereas the traditional law review articles are run by student editors. And so we have the Clinical Law Review and the Journal of Legal Education are two examples of that. In addition to the traditional platforms and audiences that come with those platforms, there are other audiences and venues as well. Amicus briefs, policy papers or white papers, bench and bar journals might also be different kinds of scholarship that you might write. And again, it's important to understand your own institution's institutional norms to really situate how other kinds of scholarship are viewed by your institution. And so the getting started part, right? It's really important that you understand successful writers don't follow a specific set of rules, but they do pay attention to behavioral habits. And so by behavioral habits, I mean that it may be that for myself, for example, I am much more productive in the morning than I am after 7:30 at night. So my behavioral habit and discipline that I get into is setting aside time to write in the morning. If you may do the same depending on when you find that you are most productive. Same for social habits of collegiality and collaboration. Many may regard scholarly writing as an individualistic and lonely task. And so I'm a person who likes to write alone, but I can also at times write in groups. It's important that you know your own social habits and what moves you, and cultivate positive social habits around writing, whether that's writing, setting aside time for yourself to write, or joining a writing group where you can write with others. And then the last point to make here is that with respect to emotional habits of positivity and pleasure, writing can be frustrating. Certainly, it's a long iterative process. So you might consider a habit of using that frustration not as an impediment to successful writing, but as a necessary part of the process. The blockage that enables the breakthrough, we like to say. So then the actual substance of making progress, right? So the stages of writing are that you first want to develop your thesis, and you can do that through first doing a literature review. And by literature review, I mean looking to see what literature is out there that supports the points, arguments you want to make, and to also help you do a preemption check to see if someone else has already written about the topic that you want to write about. I'll add a caveat on the preemption check that just because someone has written about the subject in which you want to write doesn't mean you're preempted. It could be that you have something different and unique and new to add. So and that you can be in conversation with other scholars who've written in this area. So keep that in mind, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're preempted from writing about something. You also want to research, write, and do more research. The best way to write is to do a lot of research and a lot of writing, and that will help you to produce what I call your first crappy draft. So the first draft that you put together usually is not a good one, and I affectionately call it the first crappy draft, and that's okay. The goal is to get to a first crappy draft. You will then want to find a reader, someone who can give you honest, non-judgmental feedback about it and help you improve your article. Once you get through the first crappy draft, then that facilitates the process of getting to the second less crappier draft, the third even less crappier draft, and then the fourth solid draft, fifth good draft, etc. And the way you can do that is to workshop it. And by workshop it, I mean present the article at conferences like the AALS Clinical Conference, Works in Progress session, or to present it at other schools that offer workshop opportunities. And then you will produce hopefully a final article and abstract. So the timeline for writing can be long, 6 months to a year sometimes. It's an iterative and recursive process. I suggest identifying benchmarks and setting timeline targets. For example, you might say, I am going to produce my first crappy draft in time to present at the AAS clinical conference. You might set a timeline target. I'm going to submit this for publication during the spring submission cycle. So I'm going to have a full draft done by then. And then you get to the getting it published. And so in order to get it published, I suggest you write an effective abstract that will give the reader a good idea of what the article is about. For submitting to traditional law review articles, we have a process called Scholastica in which you can submit electronically. You can also submit by email. There are generally two submission cycles, spring and fall. There's a source here we've listed that lists the various journals that are law reviews that are accepting articles and the timeline in which they're accepting them that we highly recommend. Keep in mind the peer-reviewed journals have a separate schedule and process, and you'll want to look specifically at those journals for that information. You can also publish by posting to SSRN or responding to a call for papers. The Legal Scholarship blog often has calls for papers that will be helpful to you in finding places to publish your work. You'll also want to think about where you place your article. If you're trying to place in a traditional law review, I like to say the real work begins before the submission cycle, WWR, write, workshop, revise. The best way to get published is to write a solid piece through the workshop writing, workshop, and revising process. When you submit an article for publication, make sure it's a finished product, no missing footnotes. Consider whether or not you want to submit in the spring or fall. In most law review articles, you'll have a first footnote where you put your name, and you might also thank people who've read the article or provided feedback, and also list the names of the places where you workshopped it. I find that footnote very helpful to signal to those who are reviewing the article that this is something that's been vetted and read by others. And then lastly, think about strategic expediting, thinking about if you get an offer from one journal, taking that offer and trying to get another competing offer from another journal. I'm happy to answer by email any specific questions about strategic expediting. And I'll close by just saying that you can do this, do something great. As clinicians, we all have very valuable things to add in terms of our scholarship. So I will end with encouraging you to go out and write something great, do something great. Thank you.